Hello! Welcome to another episode of Ice Ice Beta, a podcast about nice climbing, mixed, and dry tooling. Today we talk with Marianne van der Steen, who is one of the top female ice and mixed climbers and competition dry toolers in the world today. She's climbed WI7, M10 Trad, and recently joined the D15 Club, the third woman to climb the grade alongside Angelika weiner and Haruko Takeuchi. While she's won many European Cups in ice climbing and reached the World Cup finals a number of times, she hasn't yet been able to break through to the podium. Will that change this season? Damned if she isn't giving it her all to make it happen. She's often training 2 to 3 times a day and at least 5 days a week. We talk with Marianne about what it looks like to go all in for your goal, what Der Weg ist das Ziel and DTS mean, and how we need to have a hard talk about ethics in outdoor dry tooling. All that and more in today's episode. And thank you very much to our new patrons, Jesse. Appreciate it. We're live.
All right.
Hey, Marianne. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm sitting in the sun. I'm going to climb later on the day. And I am very happy talking to you and talking about ice climbing and dry tooling. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us. Are you still at the Dolomites?
No, unfortunately not. I had to teach a climbing course in Germany and over the weekend. And today we're climbing ourselves. But we drove all the way to Luxembourg because I'm meeting up with my parents over here in Luxembourg. So traveling all around Europe. And this weekend, I'll be back in the Netherlands to teach dry tooling again.
Getting right to the questions. You're an ice climber from a country without mountains. How the hell does that work?
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. And especially in the country where I live, in the Netherlands, it's so strange to explain. I first have to explain to people when I talk about ice climbing that imagine yourself an ice skating ring. And that's like horizontal flat. And now flip that one a 90 degrees. So it's all the way vertical. And then you take these pinpointy things and you try to kick into it and it holds so you can actually climb up it. And then they start like imagining it, but they have no clue. And then you try to like, okay, a waterfall in summer, then it freezes in winter, and then you can climb up and you still see those blank faces with no expression. And like, pretty sure that they do not understand anything. So that's kind of a hard thing. At the same time, I'm very lucky with my parents. They always took me out to the Alps in the summertime hiking, and hiking became more technical climbing, more vertical. We hired a mountain guide every summer, and first only once and then twice and then more technical. And my parents are super, super sporty as well. My brother too. So it was for a mountain guide also very motivating to have us around to guide. Um, and then I got into rock climbing, mainly in a gym, when I started studying. So I started like properly climbing when I was 21, which is pretty late for a climber, I guess. Then I moved to Iceland with my ex-boyfriend. And in Iceland, in summertime, it's nice rock climbing and bouldering, but in wintertime, it's not so nice. So they invited me to go ice climbing. And that was my very first real waterfall ice climbing, except for glaciers, what I've done before. They thought I was already a really experienced ice climber because I'd been climbing in the Alps. So those guys, they took me to 2 waterfalls in the inland in Iceland. And one was a water ice 5 and one was a water ice 6. And at that time, I had no idea what water ice 5 meant or water ice 6 meant. And they pushed me into leading it. And I still had no idea how to do this kind of things. So I was floating ice screws and it took me forever to place one single ice screw. And those guys were super frustrated because like it took me forever to actually climb the roof. I didn't get pumped easily because I was training a lot for bouldering. But yeah, my technique sucked. So my very first ice climb was leading a water ice 5 and then later on leading a water ice 6. And I had no idea that that was actually serious. That was only later on. This was the time when we didn't have Facebook yet. Or, well, you had like 10 friends on Facebook or something. It was just starting. So there's not really the social media thing you have nowadays that if you tag it, like you do hashtag ice climbing or something, that you find 1,000 pictures of awesome ice climbs. So I emailed our national federation on how ice climbing was going and how this went in the Netherlands. And maybe I could follow a course somewhere because it was a lot cheaper to do that there. And then it got me in contact with who's now my husband, Dennis, um, because they were trying to figure out a new national team for ice climbing. And as I'd done already international competitions in sports climbing, and apparently water ice 5 and 6 climbing was really good, I qualified kind of to be potentially part of the new national ice climbing team. And so Dennis emailed me back then. So, hey, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And after a few conversations, said like, hey, do you want to join the World Cup ice climbing? And it's like, you get like this thing in your brain, like, wait. And like, first we go to trying if I could actually do this, then maybe a national championship or a European thing, and then the World Cup. That would be like the logical order. But there was no national championship ice climbing in the Netherlands because the sport is so tiny in our country. So it was bam, straight World Cup or nothing. And well, of course, I said yes, because that's like an awesome adventure if you're actually invited to go to the biggest ice climbing competition in the world. So I said yes. I came back to the Netherlands. I joined my very first World Cup ice climbing in Val d'Aoun in Italy, now 13 years ago. And I got into the semifinals. So yeah, and from there it all started. It was just one big snowball effect, getting bigger and bigger and bigger until I decided to move back to the Netherlands as I lost my job in the crisis in Iceland. And I had some money left. So I decided to start training for this ice climbing thing because it went so well in this first season. And it grew up to where we are today.
So you started with a WI5 and your second was a WI6, and then you got into the semifinals in the World Cup, your first competition season. Are you always uh, on an accelerated track, would you say?
I can get extremely focused on some things. So, if I want something and if I see that it goes, so if I get an external motivation too, then I really try to stick to it and really try to work as much as I can to actually achieve it. Um, so I did that always in the past with my studies. And right now I do that a lot with sports, but also as a child, I did that with sports as well. I was in the national speed ice skating team at the same time as horseback riding, and I was invited for the national US team in handball at the same time. So I was quite fanatic always. And this helped me quite a lot to this experience as a child helped me a lot to understand what was required to be a good competition climber in ice climbing.
I was reading some of your early blog posts, and I remember you were talking about how, like, I think climbing a D8 your first year or a D9 was something that seemed, big and maybe beyond you. I guess this is 13 years ago or so, but you've progressed quite quickly. You climbed your first D14 8 years ago. You flashed D13 plus, several time a European Cup champion, and reached the finals several times in the World Cups. So maybe can you just walk us through the progression over the past decade or so?
The more I started climbing, the more I focused on this ice climbing thing, the more I realized that this is really something that belongs to me. That is so much me in all ways possible. So the strength required to be an ice climber, the dedication required for the training, the environment of the outdoors, on being in the middle of nowhere in the cold, trying to survive and then even perform, the technical difficulty, all the equipment that is needed, all these kind of things together, I realized more and more and more that that's really something my brain and my body kind of needs. So I got more addicted to it. And the more addicted I got onto it, the better it went. So from 1 year on reaching, well, the first competition in Valdaona, I reached the semifinals, which was already something like, oh, okay, maybe I can actually do this. But my second competition was the World Cup in Saste. And I reached the fourth place in the finals on the second competition ever on the World Cup. And you're like, wait a sec. Am I actually here? Am I actually doing this? So they extremely motivated me. At the same time, in the Netherlands, we do not have coach. We do not have a trainer. At that time, we didn't even have a wall. We didn't have national championships. So it was just, yeah, it was very limited. So it took me a lot of time to process and understand how to train for the sport, how to improve for the sport. And of course, you can do a million pull ups back home on a fingerboard, but then with ice axes. But the technical difficulty on the World Cup is different from just being able to do 100 pull ups. So I could get stronger, but I needed to get more technical as well. That took me years to figure out because there was nobody who was going to tell me how to actually do this. Looking back at this whole process, I think like I should have made different decisions on this in the past as well. I always doubted, like, should I really go for this? Okay, I've done this university studies and I've experienced the World Cup and I've gotten really far on this. So maybe now I should go and actually work and maybe get like a serious relationship, maybe get children, get a normal job. And was always in the back of my head. And culturally around us, there's not so much of an outdoor culture as what you see in the United States around Boulder, what you see in France around Chamonix, that people really focus on their sports, on their outdoor sports. So I thought that was the right thing to do. So I never took the big step to really, really go for it and really, really decide to give up a lot of other things and only go for climbing. I tried, but I always kept this backup plan on different work stability, finances, instead of just like, hey guys, goodbye. I'm going to climb all winter and then I'm completely broke and I've come back and I see maybe I'll work in a supermarket, whatever I do. I didn't dare to. And I should have. Because looking back, I thought that reaching D12, D13 was the maximum ever. And it's only now that I realized like maybe D15 is not the maximum ever. Maybe reaching the finals of the World Cup is not the maximum ever. Maybe I can do even more. Plus, I've got one huge advantage, and that is my husband, Dennis. We got married and we travel together. So it's literally laying next to each other in bed and thinking about the next ice climb we're going to do and what gear to bring. And it makes things so much easier. And that's the stage where I'm in right now. I quit my job last December and only do tiny little things in between, mostly climbing related, not making much money, eating the shittiest food possible because it's a lot cheaper, but still I'm here and I'm performing and living actually my best life and feeling a lot happier too.
I am curious for some clarity because I was reading an article, maybe from 2016. I think you were in Germany. Dennis was finishing a product design master's degree or something of that sort. But you were talking about your typical day, and it included waking up and running 8 kilometers to the office, doing some work there, and then bouldering in the afternoon,
Mhm.
and then I think getting a ride back, and then going climbing or something in the evening. So it sounded like you were training quite a bit even back then. So what is different today? Is it this idea of just going all in?
Mentally, the idea is different. I didn't believe in it back then, and not as much, whilst I believe in it much more today. Plus, that my job wasn't very nice, so it was very strenuous. It was mentally exhausting. And that was so exhausting that I couldn't focus fully on the things that I actually wanted to do. It took so much energy that in the evenings I wanted to climb, but my brain was so full that I couldn't release that. And the next day was the same thing. And my brain was so full again. So I always needed days to mentally recover to get back into climbing again. And switching back and forth between those two things became quite unhealthy. You could keep that up to a certain level, and maybe for an endurance sports that would work, but for a technical thing, like ice climbing, that was just too much. So I tried, but I didn't run as fast. I didn't climb as strong. I didn't climb as much. I didn't climb with the same dedication. Like if you dyno, you really have to dyno, and otherwise you just miss. And that was what's happening all the time. You try to do a dynamic move, but your mind is not doing the dynamic move, so you miss. So I didn't get the same out of it.
So perhaps the shift for you now is being able to reach your maximum, your ultimate potential. And so there's something for you where now you want to see clear of all these other maybe obligations or mental constraints, like what you can do. Is that accurate?
Totally. Yeah. And my mind has got the freedom to do this right now. And I realize like I will so much regret it if I do not try this completely. If I do not go for this fully, is I keep on like balancing all these kind of things in between, and I want to reach my 100% maximum potential and not just a little bit. But then the climbing of my D14s, I climbed multiple back then, and also already in the case of Tomorrow's World, that wasn't even news. I didn't even want to write about it because it was not the hardest, and there were more people doing this. So I thought, like, yeah, well, maybe this is at least the minimum I should be able to do to win anything or to improve. But now I realize, like back then, like, girl, you were already climbing this kind of grade. Why didn't you do it back then? Why didn't you start like forcing your body and everything to go even further? When Angelika climbed a line above the sky, I didn't believe I could do that. Like definitely not. But maybe I could have. This is so stupid looking back. But hey,
Speaking of which, you just did send a line above the sky. Congratulations.
yeah, thank you.
So it's the world's first D15, a route by Tom Ballard in Tomorrow's World in the Dolomites. It's a classic hard dry tooling cave. First off, congratulations. It's incredible. How do you feel about it?
So last week I climbed a line above the sky, and I hung it in 2017, the year that Angelika and Reiner climbed the route as well. And it was just so long. This just looked impossible to do this kind of thing. And now I only needed 5 tries to climb the route, which feels completely unrealistic, to actually just need that little time to climb one of the hardest routes in the world. It feels fantastic. I've got a lot of things I'm always very insecure about myself, about the things I do. And a lot of those insecurities disappeared by proving myself that I could actually do this. Like the insecurities, I always, like maybe, and all the women, I find myself too heavy. And oh, I'm too heavy to do this, and I cannot. And that's always the extra voice in my head. And at the same time, I know it's stupid to think like that. I shouldn't. And so I keep on telling myself as well, like, I don't think this kind of nonsense. It's nonsense. But right now, also climbing this, I'm like, wait a second. So it doesn't matter how much you weigh because I know I'm not at my fittest yet. I'm building up still. And I did a lot of heavy body weight training. So I've got super heavy legs of all the squat training I've been doing. So it doesn't matter. And I always try to like wear like the perfect clothing outfit. So I have special socks that I wear for my clients because I believe that those socks will like have like a positive outcome on my clients or something. And I wear socks with holes in them because I didn't expect it to climb it that day. I had gloves that were worn out because the gloves were just I wanted to buy new gloves, but I couldn't buy new gloves. I couldn't find them in the shop. So the gloves were worn out. We only had one rope. So we could only use that rope. And the rope is 9.8, almost 10 millimeters, and it's older. So it's super heavy. I feel like dragging the rope for 45 meters because that's how long the route is. And it worked. So my mind changed a lot over this week by like, okay, so maybe I'm not too happy. Maybe I'm capable of doing this kind of things. And that got me into a process on realizing like maybe I'm capable of even more things and more cool stuff and gave me a lot of confidence.
So for this particular route, I mean, only a handful of people have repeated it, no?
Yeah, I think 10 climbers altogether, but I'm not 100% sure. But
There's still self-doubt, but there's also newfound, I guess, questions and possibilities. So for you, does this self-doubt ever go away? Like, is it, climbing D16, or is this more motivation now? I guess, where's your mental space at this point?
processing from I'm not even sure if I belong on the World Cup to being part of this tiny group of climbers that actually climbed this route and climbed D15, it gives me a huge confidence boost for sure. Still, my confidence always goes up and down. Right now, I'm going back home to the Netherlands in a few days. I'll train on the artificial wall again. And I haven't trained properly for 2 days in a row. And I'm already worried, like, oh my God, I have to train. I have to train now because otherwise I do become fat and I'm going to lose all my muscles and um I won't be fit enough for the World Cup season and etc. etc. Which is of course nonsense, but that's what my mind keeps on making up. And then, so it goes up and down. But altogether, it's a huge line upwards and a huge confidence boost climbing such a hard route and also in such a short period of time with only so little tries and also relatively fast. If I compare my climbing time, I climbed it in just under 30 minutes. Angelika took an hour to climb the route. Haruko took 45 minutes. I don't like to compare because we're all different and we approach it differently. But at the same time, it's like, wait, so this actually is going really good. And it's not that I barely climbed it. I climbed it even fast. Yeah, it's a good start of the season for sure.
Well, what's also interesting is in the past, you've talked about how you climb slowly, and that was sort of your greatest strength. You could hang on forever, shake out, recuperate. So it sounds like, have you changed your training?
In the past, I never really trained. I only just climbed because I didn't know how to actually train. I went to the climbing gym. I did a little of sports climbing. And slowly I figured out that maybe I should become a little bit more dynamic. Maybe I should become a little faster. And more on the competitions are focused on fast climbing and more dynamic climbing. I really like, maybe I should actually start training this, but I didn't know how to actually train this kind of things. So I started bouldering a lot more and trying to focus on dynos and dynamic movements, and mainly also changing my mindset in routes. And this is a difficult thing because on alpine routes, I do a lot of alpine climbing too, you need to be secure. And the security often comes with stability. And stability is not fast, it's slow. And that was my strength. I could just always stand. I could always step. I would never fall. The harder the grade, I would still climb the same pace, the same stability, the same security. But that's useless in competitions. So I somehow needed to change this security, stability, and the slowness is part of my mental thing as well. So being slow, I had time to process things. I had time to understand my surrounding, to overthink everything, to make sure that the next move was going to be 100% correct. And it always has to be correct, in my mind at least. But also that is not going to, well, maybe it brings you to the finals, but it's not going to get you winning a competition. You have to take risk. And this risk-taking thing is so not my thing. But I knew that if I wanted to get further, if I wanted to go beyond this point that I was already on, I needed to work on that. The last year, I started working together with a physiotherapist, and we started working on all kinds of things that I wasn't good at, which is horrible. Because if you work on your things you're not good at, you realize that you're not that good that you think you are. And that I was always apparently, well, I know it of myself, that I was smuggling. So meaning I could do a lock off, but if I just do a tiny little bit with my other hand and then lock off so I could hang easier. So I would do always this kind of little things, the in-between things, and always try to solve it with strength instead of with the force or tactical things. And so I kept on doing that. And he kept on telling me not to do this. It gave me exercises on how to change this. And this worked. So I started jumping, and I started jumping further, and I started jumping higher, and I started to become more dynamic in combined movements by just training in this little physiotherapy room instead of on an ice climbing wall. And that's the process I'm currently in, and I'm still improving on. I know that I can still improve a lot. There are standardized tests, for example, for dynamic movements. And in the start, we started like, whoa, you're really, really bad at this. And you're at about this level in the test. And right now we're like, well, you're higher than the standard. So that's really good. So now we're going to move even further up. And this type of training, I think, made the tiny switch I kind of needed to perform even better. Last year on the European Cup Series, on the World Cup Series, where I reached all the finals in all the competitions. I won almost all the European Cups, and now climbing this D15 as well.
So you had the base physically, and so maybe you were like, the way that I understand it is you had a very strong like engine, and maybe now that you've moved to more like power endurance activities, you're sort of increasing the max horsepower that you can get.
Yeah, so it's different muscle fibers that I need to address, and I just don't have those muscle fibers, so I need to build them. I'm kind of lucky, I think, with my body having always been super sportive, meaning I can easily grow those muscles and understand a lot about the force that has been put on my body. Um, so it was easier to get into that state for sure. But it's definitely a mental thing as well. It's not just a physical thing. I had to start believing that I could actually do this. I cannot jump. And I still have the feeling I cannot jump. But apparently nowadays I can do dynos.
Do you have the feeling that you can podium at the World Cup?
Yes. Which is a very scary thing to say.
You've been knocking on the door for a while, right? I mean, several years you've finished fourth.
Yeah. And I would like to. I'd like to get a little bit further. Um, but yes, so far I haven't. And I know I'm a lot closer now. And I would find it honestly amazing if I would actually reach the podium of the World Cup. Yeah. You see, you don't have to cut this out or anything. It's just, my emotions are, I really, really want this, but I find it also really, really difficult to kind of claim those words. Because who am I to, um, to think that I'm good enough, that I'm worth it to actually reach the finals and the podium of a World Cup ice climbing. Who am I? I'm this Dutch girl. I don't believe that I'm the best. I don't believe that I'm worth a lot of things. And this kind of thing in my mind always blocks me. And I never dared to speak out loud on reaching. Like, you asked the question, and part of my training, which I'm doing this year, is not only the physical training, but also the mental training. Is actually daring to say what you want. And yes, I do want to reach the podium of the World Cup. Actually, and I find that even more difficult to say. You hear it in my voice.
Yeah.
Shit. I would like to win.
Nice.
Yeah. And as you hear, I find it difficult to say that even.
How does that feel to say it? Are you comfortable with having that on the podcast?
Yeah, I'm okay. I want to be honest and I want to be true. And apparently, this is me at the moment. And I never dare to show this. But I think it's kind of good to show that even though you climb D15, it doesn't all come supernatural and you just jump around happily and then it doesn't take any effort. It does take a lot of effort, mentally and physically.
It seems like there's the giving yourself permission to declare what you want. And I mean, honestly, it seems like that's just lagging behind like what you've already accomplished. You know, it's like you've already done so much. So there's giving yourself permission. And then there's also the fact that when you seem to not care about a goal, you also perform your best.
Totally.
So there's that discrepancy. I'm curious, how are you approaching that dynamic these days?
If nobody's watching, if I don't tell anybody what my actual goal is, if I'm on my own or only around with people I trust, I perform best. And that I can be myself. Nobody's judging me. Then I feel fully free and I can climb much better. And for some reason, I still get attracted to doing World Cup climbing. Because on the World Cup, everybody is watching and there's literally judges judging you. At the same time, it's also kind of attractive to see how far I can go in this super uncomfortable game. Or at least for me, it's a very uncomfortable game. Also, maybe it's a thing that is good to have, that you are aware and that you do want to perform and that it Like if you don't give a shit, if you really don't care about anything, then I'm not even sure if you are going to reach your like potential. Maybe you don't want to. That's fine. But if you do somewhere in your mind, then well, you sometimes need to be a little bit hard on yourself, and you need to get some kind of drive somewhere from, and want to go and perform. It's different. It's kind of like an athlete mindset, maybe.
I just finished reading The Art of Freedom, the biography of Wojtek Katika, and he's like a I don't want to. He's like a warrior poet, which I know it's probably not the most apt comparison because it's climbing. It shouldn't be compared to war, but he was a very eloquent speaker and also like a leading alpinist for the fast and light style on the big ranges. But his stance was very like anti-ego. He didn't want attention. He deferred the Ballon d'Or 4 times and finally like relented towards the end of his career.
Yeah.
Because he basically was summing it up as, it changes my relationship to what is most important to me, and I don't want that influence. But there was also the dynamic that he like really did want actually recognition too, and so he was always like grappling with this. It was like this internal struggle that actually never seemed to go away for him. And what's interesting is like you need to be able to believe you can be the best to be the best, but it doesn't always have to be an egotistical thing. And I guess where do your thoughts lie in that?
Well, there's one very important thing for me is I'm not performing against others. I'm not trying to be better than anyone else. I'm trying to be my personal best. And if that is winning, if that is getting the very first place on the podium, then I'm super happy with what I do. Or maybe I'm not even happy, I'm not even satisfied because I know that I could have done better. It's my competition, it's my own personal thing, and it's not against any of the other competitors. If any of the girls are at that moment better because they get a higher place on the podium, then it's not that I hate them suddenly or that I don't think they deserve it or anything. It's just like, well, I wasn't good enough. And I should become a better climber myself and train harder and maybe have a little bit more luck. And that's a completely different thing compared to, what maybe people think about what competition is about. And it's also a great thing within the ice climbing community. Most ice climbers are not fully paid climbers that need to perform to get their salary. And therefore, there's a far more open atmosphere amongst most, not all, but amongst most of the climbers that we do help each other. It only helps the others and it helps the sport if I do sharpen those ice axes of this other climber, if I do share gloves with another climber. And that's, I think, the beauty of it as well. So yeah, performance is a strange thing in that way. Competition climbing in general is a strange thing in that way.
You and Dennis have a motto, Der Weg ist das Ziel. Maybe you want to say it?
Yes. Well, that's a pretty good pronunciation. Yeah, der Weg ist das Ziel is a saying from Goethe, so philosopher Goethe. And he took a journey along the Alps and he tried to cross the Alps from one side to the other. And he wrote a lot during his journey. And one of the main things that he wrote about was when he realized, when he was at the end, that it was not about the actual end. It was not about this actual finish line there. It was about the road that he took. And that's really something I has in my climbing as well. I do not choose the easiest way. I can scramble up a mountain, but no, I decide to take the north face. You can take the easy ice climb, or you can take the ice climb that has a higher technical difficulty, and maybe you cannot do it, but you find yourself so much more on the way. And in that is also a bit of honesty. You can only do this to yourself, and you can only do this if you're actually honest to yourself. And that's the beauty of the mountains also. There's no way to lie. You have to do it with your own body, and you have to do it with your own physical and mental being to actually climb to the summit of that mountain, to actually climb to the top of that competition climb. And that's what attracts me so much in climbing, that that's the only way to actually achieve it. You cannot lie. You cannot take sideways or ways around or something like that. You have to do all those things in between. You have to take the full road to be able to reach the finish. So that's something that's very important in everything what we do.
This might be a little bit more personal, but does that mindset apply to your relationship with Dennis as well? It seems like you guys are from the outside, like very close, very connected.
But definitely, we're a different person from when we first met. And right now, we have different life choices. We have different motivations compared to over 10 years ago. Um, and I would like to be part of that journey together with Dennis. And we also even agreed, like, okay, if that journey goes in such a way that we do not match to each other anymore, then we even want to give each other the freedom to go another road, to go somewhere else. We don't think we'll ever get to that point, but that's the kind of things we also discussed. This kind of trust and this mutual trust and respecting each other in whenever we do it, because it's not all the same interests we have. Dennis is far more into design and industrial design than I am, but I give him the space and the freedom to explore these kind of things. And if he's really, really busy with something, then let him be and not be disappointed that he doesn't have the time to go with me or to climb with me. He, for example, doesn't have big goal to win the World Cup in leads. He's already won the World Cup in speed, by the way. But um, he knows that he has to do so much for it that it would affect all the other things that he does so much that he doesn't want to take that decision. And that's okay. And that's just actually really beautiful, because it means that he's got other interests as well. And he's got other things on his mind as well, which I find really cool to watch.
You tend, at least from what I can see, is you tend to be attracted to lines that have a very strong aesthetic and importance in history. And I'll just give a few examples. You climbed Tiger's North Face, the Moonflower Buttress on Mount Hunter in Alaska, Lipton, which is a WI7 in Ryukyu. And then perhaps this one might be one of the better examples is Flying Circus, which is a sort of groundbreaking M10 by Robert Jasper. So maybe do you want to talk a little bit about what attracts you to lines and areas that you like to go climb?
I'm always very interested in the history of climbing. And with the history, I believe it's easier for me to understand the future as well. Um, and in the Netherlands, we do not have any climbing. So we do not have any base on history of climbing. It didn't evolve in the Netherlands because we do not have any mountains. So I had to learn abroad on where climbing came from and how this differs from place to place. And to get a good feeling for how this differs and how things evolve, and also how equipment evolves, um, I find it a good way to choose lines that are more historical. for example, everything that Jeff Lowe did in Colorado. When I went to Colorado, I had to climb Octopussy. I just had to get into that line, get a feeling for what it must have been like to climb that line back then. And I even chose to climb the line with my heavy boots, with my detachable crampons, to get a feeling for what it must have been like to put a figure of four. I didn't have tools with straight shafts, but if I had, I would have climbed it with straight shaft tools to experience what he experienced back then, or at least a little, because it's completely different nowadays, of course. And that's what I have with most of the lines that I've done. Get an understanding of where it actually came from. And with that, get an understanding for the future. See like how it evolved, how ice climbing evolved from a sport that you did in the super high mountains where you had this huge pickle, what we call it, a long ice axe where you would hack steps into glaciers to get higher up in a mountain, up to where we are nowadays with competitions where there's hardly any ice left. And the tools have changed and the ethics around it have changed. But that's something I understand because I climbed all those classics as well. And I think it's just really cool to climb those classics. Just the scene, the atmosphere, everything that evolves around it to jump into what used to be the very first M10 in the world between all these massive daggers. I had that picture of Robert Jasper in his full Gore-Tex suit on my laptop as wallpaper for years. And I didn't change it because I really, really wanted to see what it was like to stand in that position where he was at that time. Until I finally did it and just got that feeling or got close to that feeling. I found it really, really cool.
You talked about using the past to give you a sense of what the future is. And so what's the future of dry tooling, do you think?
In the end, what it's going to be like in 10 years, I don't know. But what I do know is that I've been dry tooling now for 13 years and I've seen the sport evolve a lot. From where I started, you had a few routes that were dry. Actually, by the way, the D, as in grading D instead of M, or M for mixed and D for dry tooling, is invented by a Dutch guy who is climbing a lot in area in Kandersteg. And he had a few lines where there was no ice and he wanted to define that there was no ice in these lines. So he said like, well, we do it the same as mixed climbing, but as there is no ice, we should define that there's no ice, that you do not need to bring your ice screws, that it forms differently. Those kind of little things, really defining that there is dry tooling, that this exists, and this is separate from mixed climbing is already a huge difference. And what we see nowadays is that there are caves that are permanently dry. We do not even think about bringing down jackets anymore. Like, for example, in Ziel, it hardly freezes. If it's too cold in the Alps, you go to Ziel and you can climb in your t-shirt with ice axes. But unfortunately, this is more and more coming reality that there is no ice anymore. The climate is changing. I'm not sure if we can do anything about it, but it's a fact that it is changing. So it becomes more realistic to practice on these kind of things and to climb these kind of things. And it actually became a sport on itself. Nowadays, you've got people that only do dry tooling and have never placed an ice screw in their lives, or only do competitions and have never done any outdoor climbing. Same as what you see in bouldering and sports climbing. There are people that only have ever been bouldering in a bouldering gym and do the hardest boulders in those bouldering gyms, but have never gone outdoors. It's a development, and it's an interesting development. And I think it's got its place. We have to be a little bit difficult with dry tooling though, because in the end, it does damage the rock. So I do not see it as a thing to replace sports climbing or sports climbing cracks. I'm in the opinion that we should choose areas that are not fitting for sports climbing or any other types of climbing, and have to be careful with this as well. But we've got enough areas like that. Like, for example, old mining areas. And right now, today I was in Ettingen, which is in Germany. And it's an old mining area. It's already damaged so much that these tiny little holes you make with your axes do not make so much a difference. So yeah, where the future goes, I think we can climb a lot harder than we do now. And I think it would be cool to see more full natural lines in dry tooling too, like Gaetan Raymond is doing right now, where he really searches for draw areas instead of drilling pockets on a wall. We've seen that in sports climbing too, where they thought it was impossible to do it, and they just drilled a pocket. And nowadays we look at those pockets and we're like, oh man, seriously, guys, why did you drill those pockets?
I get the sense that maybe the ethics of establishing dry tooling crags, or even just how people operate at tooling crags, might be a little bit behind sport climbing. I think you said that you actually saw toilet paper and other trash at base of Tomorrow's World. Is that something that you're seeing?
It's crazy. It's changing, unfortunately. And the sports grows. And with the growth of the sports, you get more people into it, and maybe less people that take responsibility for the walls where they climb, because they are assuming that other people would take care of it. But I think it's a joint thing. We all should take care of the cliff. And I find it so disrespectful to find toilet paper at a cliff from somebody who developed it, who is not with us anymore, who cannot take care of it anymore. And we all together as a climbing community should take care of this cliff, because he can't anymore. And then toilet paper is the last thing. Come on. That's just... But well, you see this in sports climbing as well. A few years ago, big sports climbing area, Ziel, was burned down partially because somebody left toilet paper, and the toilet paper ignited a whole fire. And part of the cliff was just completely damaged. So it's something that's everywhere. But I hope by talking about this to get enough awareness that we will never get into this situation where areas are going to be closed because of the damage we are causing, because of the litter we are spreading everywhere. And to make people aware that we should take care of all these kind of things together, especially in such a small sports where there's not much money going around. If somebody needs bolts to bolt a cliff, if you have a few bolts spare, if you have a little bit of money spare, please donate this so we can all make those areas safer. We can all make those areas nicer, and therefore make it a more sustainable thing for in the future.
In one of our other calls, you noted that the average 9A sport climb gets a lot more traffic than the average D14, D15, and that also impacts the way that people are interacting with these crags. So it seems like there's maybe more responsibility on the individual climber in dry tooling just at this level, because there's just less of those resources and an oversight. Do you think that's true? Not really a question, I guess. It is a question. It was sort of a statement question. Well, I guess, what are you seeing along those lines as far as like maintenance of areas that maybe don't have a caretaker anymore?
Yeah, there are quite a few areas that are developed and do not have like a designated or defined caretaker. And the group of people that are doing dry tooling is a lot smaller compared to the group of people that do sports climbing or do bouldering. So it comes onto the shoulders of a lot less people. And I'm not sure if everybody within the community is aware on that. With so few. So they assume often that other people will take care of things, but it's not. And um, we should work harder, to my opinion, to take care of the cliffs, to take care of our surroundings, um, compared to maybe what happens in a sports climbing area. Currently, I'm standing in front of a sports climbing area called Berdorf in Luxembourg, and we pay to be able to climb here. And there's a super active federation that even checks if everybody is paying to climb here and is member of a federation. That's something that's not going on within the dry tooling, and maybe a good thing because it gives us a lot of freedom as well, but also a lot of personal responsibility. Keep the area clean, change the quick draws for safety reasons also. Like you don't want to have any sharp quick draws and then maybe have rope cuts or strange falls, or same for bolts and the placements of bolts. And you have to educate each other on how to safely place bolts and communicate this in guidebooks and everything. And that's something with the tiny bit of growth that our sports is seeing is maybe missing in the communication. I hope that we can not escalate this, and that we don't get to a point where any accidents happen or any closures happen. And I hope we're starting to get into some kind of like book or anything where we're going to try and establish this kind of things. What are ethics in the area and why are those ethics there, and educate others about this? Not only about rubbish and trash, but also about, for example, the way we climb things. Like the DTS style we have. If you go to France, there's an area called usine, which literally means factory because it's next to a factory. Scenic wise, not the most beautiful place to look at the factory and all the noise of the traffic and everything that's going on there. It's mostly drilled. They invited back then people to climb there. They provided bolts and to check like, hey, if you can bolt cool sports climbing routes, we should develop this as a sports climbing area. But all the local climbers, who were literally climbing 9A, by the way, decided like, well, no, this is just not going to work in this cave. It's too wet. The rock is too crumbly. The scenery here is just terrible. And they had plenty of excuses. And they said like, well, it's not going to happen. So eventually they decided to develop it as a dry tooling area. And it's one of the oldest big dry tooling areas in the world, literally just for dry tooling instead of for mixed climbing. At this area, they decided to have a certain style, which they call DTS, which stands for dry tool style. And within this style, they're not using any specific movements that we call figure of 4 and figure of 9, putting your leg over your wrist and therefore taking pressure off your arm, making a lever and making it easier to reach the next hold. One of the reasons why they decided to do this in this area is to make it more like the original sports of ice climbing, where in the Alps, if you're wearing your heavy boots with your crampons, you would never do this type of movement. One of the other reasons is that they realized like, okay, if I do 50 figure of 4s and figure of 9s, then that's just basically climbing a ladder. It hardly even feels anymore like I'm actually hanging on ice axes. This is more like, well, we could also call it ladder climbing or something, or ice axe ladder climbing. It's not interesting anymore. So they decided, okay, in this area, if you climb the routes and we make the routes, no figure 4s. Well, that's something, because in competition climbing, we use a million figure of 4s. And a figure of 4 in a competition on those holds sometimes stabilizes the hold and the ice axe on the hold. So it gives you a huge advantage. But that's the way they want to climb there. And I think it's great to also respect the way they want the area to be used. I think it's kind of cool. I think everybody should try it because when I started trying it, it got me actually a huge advantage. I learned moves in different ways. And now that I climbed a line above the sky, I did use figure fours. I tried very, very hard to do it without the figure fours, but a lot of the movements are so big that they become even unrealistic to use figure fours. Those things are ethics and things for in the future as well. That we should educate each other about why it is there and why you should try it, why it actually might be beneficial, and kind of respect it. Respect the ones that made all those routes, respect the ones that developed the whole area. And we should write more about these kind of things. And maybe write even kind of like a leaflet or a booklet. Just as what we did in the start with bouldering on Frontside of Blow, that you're not supposed to use magnesium, but supposed to use resin. Then if you go to Alpsandstein, that you're not supposed to use hard metal gear to place in the rock because it damages the rock. All these kind of things. We should discuss this more and make it a more stable future.
We're going to dramatically change the tone of this conversation. Robert, that crazy Dutch guy, wants to know I imagine he has something in mind with this question. What was the funniest moment in meeting one of your heroes?
The funniest moment in meeting one of my heroes. Gosh. Oh, well, in general, so Robert Jasper, for example, has always been a little bit of my hero because he's climbed so many amazing routes and opened this amazing route, Ironman, and those others way before anyone else was even close to climbing this kind of routes, which I find so impressive. And well, when we met, we actually, which I found really awkward, we talked just about the routes. And we talked about it on kind of a similar level. And we discussed when we were going to climbing together. And then when we left, I had this like, wait a second. I was just talking to the one that I had on my wallpaper on my laptop for so many years. And he's actually real. We're going to climb together. And those kind of meetings I have more often. The first time I met Steve House, and then I was part of the Alpine Mentors, the very first Alpine Mentors. So we climbed together with Steve House. I'm actually, so those kind of moments, I still am this little girl who's meeting Elsa in Disney World or something like that. But apparently I'm part of this Disney World. And so I can climb with those people. But is that funny? I don't know. It's not necessarily funny or anything. It's just, I think it's just really cool. And I feel extremely privileged on being part of this group.
It could have used
Funny.
a punchline.
Gosh.
I think it's a very cool story. The follow-up question was, or maybe funny moments meeting people that are looking up to you. So maybe pulling it into a circular way.
So in the Netherlands, nobody knows what I do, or a lot of people don't know what I do. So I don't really have those kind of moments a lot in the Netherlands. But abroad, so for example, on the Euro Ice Fest, I had quite a lot of people trying to get an autograph of me, which I found really awkward after winning the Euro Ice Fest. And I believe that if you really, really want to get very far in the sports, by hard work and dedication, you can get super far. You can do a lot. I mean, I'm somebody from the Netherlands. I don't even have mountains, and still I'm able to climb this kind of things now. It took me years, but I can. And that's also how I approach everyone else. The people I teach, the people I speak when I hold a lecture, on competitions. If you want, if you have the dedication, and of course you need a little bit of luck as well, but you can get very, very far. And therefore I don't see anybody like different. I don't see them as lower or less or anything. And I always try to keep that in mind with any conversation I have, even if people approach me with autographs and I don't know how to talk to me. Because everybody is worth something and everybody's got their talents. It's only that you have to believe that you have them somewhere and go for it.
All right, you heard it, everybody. The next Euro Ice Fest, go and get Marianne's autograph.
I'm not so sure I'm going. I need to find the money to go there. But yeah, if I can, then yes.
Okay, the last question. Bum, bum, bum.
Okay.
If you were to give your younger self one piece of beta, what would that be?
Quit your job?
Yeah. Go start a podcast. Go become a full-time climber.
Yeah. Go explore. And go explore what's possible. And there's always a way. And it always goes with ups and downs. And there have been years that I was really unfortunate. There have been years that quite serious things happened. And altogether, I'm still here and I'm still growing and I'm still getting better. And I didn't knew when I started that I would actually get here. And I should have trusted the process a lot more. And I should have listened to myself and my own feeling a lot more. And I basically came all together and quit my job.
And here we are.
Yeah.
It was great to hear more about your journey.
Thank you. Thank you too. Thank you for having me. It's really nice.
For Marianne, part of going all in this year has meant giving up full-time employment. Because competition ice climbing is still so young, climbers on the World Cup stage typically have to pay their own way, and it's quite expensive. If you want to support Marianne and help her travel to the season's events in Korea, France, and Switzerland, you can donate to her crowdfunding campaign at gofundme.com/help-me-become-ice climbing, one word, -world champion, one word. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice, or support us on Patreon at patreon.com/icebeta. Ciao.